Yeah, I tried doing voiceovers for film reviews instead of, actually sitting down, but I don't think it works out, even half as well. So yeah, we're back to this, basically. Back to our regularly scheduled programming. Alright, so Midsommar is a 2019 folk horror film written and directed by Ari Aster, starring Florence Pugh, with the film following a group of kids who go to Sweden for an event/festival that takes place once every 90 years with a pagan cult. So, how did this idea come about? Well, Aster originally came up with the idea of a slasher flick, all being based around the cult, but after he went through a breakup himself, he came to the realisation that a deteriorating relationship to be the core focal point of the film, and what it pivots around could lead to a more interesting dynamic. So that's what he went with, and it led to an interesting choice as it made Pugh's character the lead focus for the film and gave us someone who we kind of rooted for throughout, even when we weren't 100% sure of what the actual plot or point of the film was going to be, but at least we knew who we cared about. With the film receiving countless praise from all of its viewers, who really loved the direction of the film and Pugh's performance as a whole, there was a film that ended up getting spoken about for potential Oscar nominations and Academy Awards, but that didn't come to fruition. But it is a film that is revered and noted when the horror genre appears. Like, for this film, the tone was really set by the score created by Bobby Click, and he gave us something that was eerie and ominous, yet interesting and engaging, which was pretty much how those who visited the cult felt about it as a whole. After the death of her family via carbon monoxide poisoning in a murder-suicide by her sister Danny, felt alone in the world, and her distant boyfriend Christian was not helping in matters. As summer was approaching, Christian was planning to visit Sweden with his friends and was strongly considering breaking up with Danny, but after the death of her family, he was no longer able to do such an act. And this led to her getting invited on the trip, which was not really something that Christian's friends wanted to happen, but it was the way that it, went along. We learn, I'm in Spain. We learn a lot about the cult as they're there, with us finding out about those who hit the age of 72 being killed, well, killing themselves, but in a rather brutal manner, because the cult doesn't accept individuals who live past that age, as they become a drain on the society. We end up with understanding that incest is avoided in the community by the use of outsiders, which then results in the camera kind of panning towards our cast, and because that's what they are now, they are outsiders. So we know that there is some form of sexual advances are expected to happen between the people who have been brought to the camp and those who are currently living in it. There is a contest that is held that is just based around dancing and flowers, which is won by Danny, giving her the title of May Queen, and bestows upon her a power of ultimate or final decision, which demonstrates that people can grow following any and all traumas that they have into someone who's drastically different from what they were beforehand, and the effects that pretty much all trauma has on everybody. The film had multiple amazing scenes to look at, which resulted predominantly due to its creating of visual imagery that was both horrific and difficult to look away from. As mentioned, those in the commune do die around the age of 72, with them committing suicide by jumping off a cliff just into the depths below. But if they were to survive that, they do have their heads smashed in with mallets, and that was kind of horrific to witness on screen, and I can only imagine what it would be like to see that, with your own eyes, the blood, brains, the sudden aspect of it, but the sheer intensity, to witness it personally would have to be insane, even if you are aware that it is coming. There are some things that can be overlooked in a lot of films, but with the runtime in this of 2.5 hours, a lot of everything that you need to be covered or looked into was. Like, the film didn't take any liberties, it took the time to tell its story the way it wanted to tell it, to give you all the information that it believed you were going to need to have the most impact. The scenes of the contest with the girls dancing and seeing the effect that the drugs that they're taking have on them, with the clothes they're wearing and even the way that they moved, led to the viewer feeling like they were a part of this pagan ritual in this cult, that even though we are so far removed from it, we were given such great performances and visuals by Aster himself, and the story really did encapsulate us, and we were able to become involved and interested in everything that was going on. But for the scenes that will live long in memory, they of course, like most films, take part towards the end of the film. The sex scene is of course memorable, but more so because of how uncomfortable that it actually is. We've got the moaning, the attendees, the actions of external forces for it to take place. It all feels so unnerving and difficult to watch, and yeah, like it's very peculiar, and like I don't want to mention who's involved in the scene, but like it is very weird. And then when we end up with a question surrounding like the idea of the bear, we're left wondering how can someone, you know, end up inside a bear, with the haunting shot of Danny smiling as she comes to understand the growth that she's completed during her time in the commune and everything that came before. We're left wondering what could possibly be on the other side for her and for those who remain. The film focused on non-traditional horror tricks that can cause us to become afraid and basically cause us to begin to question everything that came before and what comes after. Like the use of the visuals at the end of the film and the shift that takes place when psychedelics are taken versus when they're not in use allow us to never be 100% sure of what we're seeing, and the colours involved in the film even change as Danny becomes more and more aware of the true nature of the cult and what their plans are. The changes in lighting, filters and the subtle changes in Pugh's acting itself, we end up with a film that takes you beginning to end through a whole experience, and if you're paying attention the whole time you will perhaps be able to see certain things before they actually happen, which is always great in a film, instead of feeling that if you don't pay attention there's no idea for what's going to come. This film gives you the opportunity to be fully aware of what may or may not happen. The signs, words, actions of the commune are very in line with what we would expect a cult to use. They believe in pagan gods, they have a culture with a limited life cycle, they offer sacrifices to those above them in the hopes of good graces. They have clothing which is used as a sign of purity, and the use of fire to cleanse the soul or right wrongs are all things that you would attribute to those who worship a greater being. And the film does a good job of something that is very difficult for horror films in general, and that is for you to be able to feel as if it could happen to you. I mean, we've all been invited on trips with people, we've all gone on holidays with friends, ended up somewhere we weren't sure of, but generally we've all ended up safe and sound. This is a story of what happens when you're in that situation and it doesn't work out the way that you expect it to. Things will not always work out the way that we plan or that we hope, and Aster successfully plays our minds through this and encapsulates our fear to the point that we're as paralysed as those who end up getting sacrificed as lambs. He has a new film coming out, Beau is Afraid, and I've been hearing mixed things about it. I don't expect it to be anywhere near as good as Midsommar, but it is a film that if someone mentions that they like horror, if they haven't seen Midsommar, you should definitely point them onto it, as it's an experience all the way around.